Good morning, everyone. Today we will present about the numeric reasoning assignment. Our group, Home Group 1, consists of Jonathan Chandra, Muhammad Zada, Yubitri Mauren, Zahid Faladia, Edwina Alisa, Mirsa Alif, and Jian Lee. The problem one first case is about the production of chili. The first case talks about the production of the fresh chili in 2010 to 2011. Here we can find that the independent variables are the productivity in the harvest area, and the dependent variables is the production of the fresh chili itself. We've made the graph here, and you can see that the production of fresh chili in 2011 is increased from 2010, and it is because there is an increase in productivity and a slight decrease in harvesting. And from the data we have, the curve is increasing, but we can't really predict what will happen in the future based on only 2 years of data. So if we have to predict the next year, production of fresh chili will also be increased. The second case is the production of the onion. The second case talks about the number of onion production over 2010 to 2011. In this case, we have found that the independent variables are the year when the onion is produced, and the dependent variables are the number of the onion produced. We have the graph here. Here we can see that the production of the onion in 2011 has decreased compared to the previous year in 2010. This occurs due to the decrease in harvest areas and also as well as the in productivity. From the graph that we have here, we can see that it is sloping downwards, so we might assume that it will go down will also go down in the next year. However, we can't really be sure because you only have the data of 2 years. The third case is about the foreign tourists in Indonesia in 2011 to 2012. Here we know that the independent variables are the month and the year, and the dependent variables are the numbers of foreign tourists arrive in Indonesia. Here we have the graph. From the graph, we can see that the number of the foreign tourists coming in Indonesia, there is more in June. Moreover, there is also a slight increase in every year. While the tourists through Ngurah Rai Bali account for approximately 1/3 of the total, which is a lot. Because we talk about the whole Indonesian year, and the tourists come through the Ngurah Rai Bali takes 1/3 of the total. So if we have to predict about the next year, the data is too few for us to predict, but if we have to, for the upcoming years, June is the month for the more foreign tourists that will come, and it will also increase in terms of number. While regarding the tourists in Ngurah Rai Bali, it will remain making up 1/3 of the total.
Okay, so now we're moving on to problem 1, case 4, which talks about Indonesian export. As you can see here, the independent variable is month and year, and the dependent variable is export value. As you can see that we categorize it from the graph into the two categories, which is export value and non-oil or gas exports. And based on our interpretation that export value in Indonesia has been decreased in June 2012 compared to the previous year. And when we talk about the prediction, I think it's kind of hard for us to predict since the data only covers 2 periods, so it's kind of make it unreliable if we predict it. And then we move to the case 5, which talks about number of poor population in Indonesia. The independent variable is a year, and the dependent variable is the number of poor population in Indonesia. And based on our from the graph that we can see that there are 3 lines here, the urban areas, rural areas, and total areas. And based on our interpretation that the number of poor population in Indonesia has been decreased in 2012 compared to 2011 by around 890,000 people. And there's also decreasing trend in both rural and urban areas. And based on our prediction, I think it's also same as the previous one, that is kind of hard for us to predict since the data only covers 2 periods. But if we have to, I think in the future, the number of poor population in Indonesia will still decreasing, and the rural area will cover 60% of the number of poor population in Indonesia. And next up, we talk about problem 1K6, talk about production growth of large and medium manufacturing industry. As you can see here, independent variables is quarter and month. Dependent variables is the growth of production of large and medium manufacturing industry. And we separated the graph to the quarter base, and which is on the left, and the month base, which is on the right. As we can see here, that in the quarter on the left, if we assume that the production growth or the production of the first quarter in 2011 is 1, then we can see that there has been growth until fourth quarter in 2011. However, after that, in the first quarter 2012, the graph decreasing. However, if we talk about the graph on the right, which is the month base, the graph remains or gradually increasing. And when regarding the prediction, I think it's also hard for us to predict since the data is too fluctuating. So yeah, we cannot predict it in the future.
Okay, so now I'll be talking about the problem 2, case 1, which is about the population growth rate in different provinces found in Indonesia. From this case, we have found that the independent variables are the regions and the years, and the dependent variable is the annual population growth rate. So based on the graph plotted, we can see that in Jakarta, there was a significant decline from 3.993 in 1871 to 1980 to 2.4.2 in 1980 to 1990 for their population growth rate, while for West Java, the decrease is very slight by just below 0.1. Therefore, if the graph links until the last period, the annual population growth rate in Jakarta is smaller than West Java. This reading from the graph might suggest that there has been major birth control awareness, especially in Jakarta, as the decline in population growth rate is really massive. As we know also, Jakarta doesn't have that much land area compared to the number of population living in the area. So the government at that time might have taken serious action in order to reduce the birth rate so that Jakarta won't be overpopulated. So now I'll be also discussing case 2, which is about the data of the fertility rate around many provinces in Indonesia. We have identified the independent variables as the years when the data was taken, which is from 1971 to 1999. For the dependent variable, what we are assuming, what we are measuring here is the fertility rate among those years the data was taken. From the graph, it shows that the female population is higher in all region except Banten and Bali. There's an increasing trend for male population, while a decreasing trend for female population from all the region within the year 2009 to 2010. If we take the data from 1971, the local maximum is the data from DKI Jakarta to West Java, which means that there is an increase in population, and the local minimum is from the Yogyakarta to East Java, which means there is a decrease in population. And now for problem 2, case 3. In this case, it is talking about the education indicator. We have found that the independent variable is the years of schooling, and the dependent variable is the level of education. we can see that the level of education keeps increasing slowly from the year 2005 to 2010. And the percentage for the one that doesn't go to school, the one that doesn't finish elementary school, the one that only finished elementary school and junior high school are decreasing. But the percentage for the one that finished high school increased. Also, if we compare the graph of those didn't finish elementary with the high school, we can see that those who didn't finish elementary tend to decrease. However, those who passes high school tends to be higher. In conclusion, we have found that we can see that people have increased their priorities towards education, which leads to a decrease in those who didn't finish elementary and increase in finishing high school. And if we see from the citizens that don't finish elementary, the maximum local is increasing in 2007 to 2008, and the local minimum are in the 2005 to 2006, 2006, 2007, and 2009 to 2010. This means that in 2007 and to 2008, there was an increase in citizens that don't finish elementary, and while in the other years, there's a decrease in citizens that don't finish elementary.
Hello class, my name is Edwina Alisa Matindas and I'll be explaining about cases 4 to 6 of problem 2 of the assignment on numerical reasoning. So the next case explains about the nutrition of toddlers in Indonesia, with independent variables being the years and the dependent variable being the nutritional status of the toddlers. From the graph, the majority of the toddlers in Indonesia have good nutrition at roughly 70%. The second highest level is mild malnutrition at roughly 20%, and then malnutrition at 7%, followed by excessive nutrition at around 2 to 3%. From the trends in 2001 to 2003, it does not differ on a year-to-year basis, as the percentage levels tend to stay the same, and indicating that nutrition levels among toddlers in Indonesia are steady and predictable. I will move on to the fifth case of problem 2, which explains about Indonesian population percentages by province and gender. The independent variable of this data is gender and year. Meanwhile, the dependent variables are the percentage of population by province. From the graph, it shows that the female population is higher in all regions except for Banten and Bali. Also, a common pattern for all regions from 2009 to 2010 is the increasing trend for the male population and a decreasing trend for the female population. It is shown in the graph from the year 2009, the maximum percentage of the male population is at around 50.7% in the Banten region. Meanwhile, the minimum percentage of the male population is 48% in the Yogyakarta region. This represents that Banten has the highest percentage of the male population, while Yogyakarta has the highest percentage of the female population. So the last case that I'll explain about is the plantation areas in Indonesia. We have chosen tea and coffee plant types to explain in this case study. So the data can be seen here in terms of hectares. From the graph, it shows that all tea plantations have a slightly larger area every year than coffee plantation. This might be due to the fact that Indonesia is a large tea exporter. In addition, it can be seen that both tea and coffee area plantations had reached its minimum point in 2008 before increasing again. This is possibly due to the global economic crisis, which caused lower consumption for coffee and tea products. So with that, I conclude our Home Group 1's presentation on numerical reasoning assignment. On behalf of my group, we thank you for listening to our presentation, and your feedback and questions are always welcome.